I couldn't stop thinking about her. I didn't notice when it started. That's the problem. It wasn't some dramatic moment. No music, no slow motion. Just Tuesday. Just the laundromat 2 blocks from my place. The one with the flickering fluorescent light and the dryer that always squeals like it's arguing with itself. I go there every week around 7. Same routine. Dump the clothes in. Overpay for detergent because I forget to bring my own. Sit by the window and pretend I'm reading something on my phone. She owns the place. I figured that out the 3rd week I saw her counting coins behind the counter. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Dark hair always tied back, sleeves rolled up like she was ready to fix something. She wore simple things, cardigans, soft-colored shirts. Nothing loud, nothing trying. The first time we actually spoke, it was about the broken washer. It shakes, I told her. Like, aggressively. She didn't look up right away. Just wiped her hands on a towel. It's dramatic, she said. But it won't explode. I promise. I laughed. She didn't. Not fully. Just this small twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she decided I'd earned half a smile. After that, it became something. Not flirting. Not really. Just small acknowledgments. She started remembering which machine I used. Once, before I could ask, she handed me 2 quarters. The dryer eats the first ones, she said. I said, I'll pay you back. She shrugged. You won't. It wasn't teasing. Just observational. And she was right. I never did. I started timing my laundry for when she was there. I told myself it was practical. She kept the place cleaner than the evening guy. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Sometimes we'd talk about nothing. How's work? She asked once. Freelance, I said. So, unpredictable. She nodded like she understood unpredictability better than I did. That usually means talented, she said. I stared at her hands when she said that. They were steady, strong. A thin silver ring on her right hand. Not a wedding ring. I noticed that and immediately felt weird for noticing. I have friends. I go out. I talk to women my age. But lately I've been catching myself doing small, embarrassing things. Typing messages I don't send. Opening her laundromat's Instagram page and scrolling through photos of folded towels. Replaying a joke she made about socks disappearing like they're choosing independence. It's quiet loneliness. The kind where your apartment is technically fine, but you leave the TV on while you shower. One night, the place was almost empty. Rain tapping the window. My clothes tumbling in slow circles behind the glass. She brought over a cup of tea and set it beside me without asking. On the house, she said. You look tired. I wasn't. Not really. But I nodded anyway. Long day, she asked. Yeah, I said, then paused. Not because of work. She waited. Not pushing. Just standing there, hands folded loosely in front of her. I almost told her something real. About how the silence in my apartment feels heavier lately. About how sometimes I scroll through contacts just to see names light up. Instead, I said, it's nothing. She tilted her head slightly. It's never nothing. We held eye contact a second too long. Not dramatic. Just steady. The dryer beeped. I didn't move. She glanced at it, then back at me. Your cycle's done, she said softly. I stood up too fast, almost knocking the tea over. She reached out instinctively, fingers brushing mine as she steadied the cup. It wasn't electric. It wasn't fireworks. It was warm. That night, when I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed with the clean laundry still in the basket. I kept thinking about the way she said, it's never nothing. My phone buzzed around midnight. Unknown number. For a second, I thought it was work. It wasn't. Hey, the message read. You left your camera lens cap here. There was a pause. Then another message. You don't seem like someone who forgets things. I stared at her message longer than I should have. You don't seem like someone who forgets things. I almost replied with something casual. Thanks. I'll grab it tomorrow. Clean. Neutral. Safe. Instead, I typed, erased, typed again. Guess I've been distracted. I didn't send it. She texted first. Doors unlocked. I'm still here. It was 12:17 a.m. I told myself I just needed the lens cap. That was it. I grabbed my hoodie and walked the 2 blocks in light rain, trying not to think about how strange it felt, being invited somewhere that late by a woman who technically closed at 9. The laundromat lights were dimmer than usual. Only the back row was on. She stood near the folding table, sleeves pushed up, a towel draped over her shoulder. You came fast, she said. It's expensive, I replied, holding up the camera like proof. She nodded, then handed me the cap. Our fingers brushed again. This time neither of us pretended not to notice. I almost didn't text, she said, looking down at the counter as if it needed rearranging. Why? She exhaled slowly. It's late. There it was. Not accusation. Not flirtation. Just awareness. I leaned against the washing machine behind me. You could have waited till morning. I know. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just loaded. The rain tapped harder against the windows. She poured tea into 2 paper cups without asking. Again. You live alone? She asked. Yeah. She nodded. Me too. It felt like more than information. Like a shared admission. My son moved out last year, she added after a pause. University? I blinked. I hadn't thought about her having a son. That shifted something in my chest. Oh, I said. That must be quiet, she finished. I nodded. She gave a small smile. You get used to cooking less. I imagined her in an apartment above the laundromat, setting a table for one. The thought unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. You're what? 25, she asked. 26. She hummed softly. My son's 20. The air changed. Not colder, just clearer. I became suddenly aware of how this might look. A 26-year-old standing in a laundromat at midnight with a woman old enough to be. I swallowed that thought. It's not strange, she said quietly, almost as if she'd heard it forming in my head. We're just talking. Yeah, I said too quickly, but I imagined scenarios anyway. Someone walking in, her son visiting unexpectedly, me trying to explain why I was here, why I felt this pull towards someone whose life was already built, already lived through chapters one hadn't reached. I got divorced 3 years ago, she said, eyes on the tea. It wasn't dramatic, just tired. Tired, I asked, of being unseen. The words settled heavily between us. I didn't know what to say to that, so I told her something smaller. I leave the TV on at night, I admitted, so it doesn't feel like I'm the only one there. She looked up then, really looked at me, not amused, not judging, just seeing. We stood there, cups warming our hands, the machines quiet around us. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. When I turned to leave, she reached out and adjusted my hoodie collar slightly, like it was crooked. It probably wasn't, but her fingers lingered half a second too long. The next week, I didn't go on Tuesday. I told myself it was because I didn't have enough laundry. By Thursday, I did. I stood in my apartment holding the basket longer than necessary. It felt stupid, avoiding a laundromat, avoiding a woman who had only ever handed me tea and small, careful truths. When I finally went back, the place felt different. Not physically. Same hum of machines. Same flicker in the corner light. But she wasn't alone. A guy about my age leaned against the counter, laughing at something she'd said. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. Sneakers kicked off. Familiar. Her son, I realized. She saw me before I could turn around. You're back, she said, and something in her voice shifted, softer, but alert. The guy glanced at me. Customer. Upstairs neighbor, she replied quickly. Then, after a second, he's a photographer. I hadn't told her she could use that word like it meant something. Her son nodded at me. Polite. Assessing. Cool. I loaded my clothes into a machine that suddenly sounded louder than usual. Metal clanged. Water rushed in. I kept my eyes on the dial, but I could feel her awareness of me. It made the air feel thinner. "Mom, I'm heading out," her son said eventually. "Mom." The word landed somewhere awkward in my chest. "Okay," she replied, voice steady. He grabbed his jacket, then paused near me. "You live close." "Upstairs," I said. He nodded again. No suspicion, just curiosity. Then he left. The door shut. Silence. She busied herself wiping down a clean counter. I pretended to scroll through my phone. "That's him," she said after a minute. I figured. He visits sometimes. "Not often." I nodded. Another silence. Not like before. This one had edges. "You didn't come Tuesday," she said, still not looking at me. "I was busy." She stopped wiping. Just for a second. Then resumed. "Of course." I hated how that sounded. Like she'd expected it. Like she'd braced for it. The dryer started its slow spin. I watched my clothes tumble, over and over. "You shouldn't feel." I began, then stopped. "Feel what?" she asked quietly. I met her eyes. "I don't know." That was the problem. She walked toward me, slow, deliberate. Not close enough to touch. Just close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. The ones that appeared when she almost smiled. "We're not doing anything wrong," she said. It wasn't defensive. It was a reminder. To herself, maybe. "I know," I replied. But my voice wasn't convincing. She studied me for a moment, searching for something I wasn't ready to name. "You're young," she said softly. There it was. The line. The boundary drawn without being drawn. "And?" I asked. "And I don't want to be something you experiment with." The word stung more than I expected. "I'm not," I said, stepping closer before I could overthink it. "That's not what?" She looked at my mouth when I stopped talking. Just briefly. Her hand lifted, like she might adjust my collar again. It hovered there, inches from my chest. We stood like that, breathing the same air, close enough that I could see the slight tremor in her fingers. I could have leaned in. She didn't move away. The dryer beeped. Neither of us stepped back. It happened on a Sunday. I wasn't planning to see her. I'd spent the afternoon editing photos at a small park cafe, headphones on, pretending I liked the noise. Across the lawn, families sat on picnic blankets. Kids ran in uneven lines. Ordinary, loud happiness. I almost missed her. She was sitting alone on a bench near the fountain, sunglasses on, a paper cup resting untouched in her hands. I took my headphones off without thinking. For a second, I considered walking past, letting it stay contained in the laundromat, in fluorescent light, in late-night quiet. But she saw me. There was a flicker, surprise first, then something more guarded. "You don't come here," she said as I approached. I could say the same. She shifted slightly, making space on the bench, not looking at me directly. I sat down anyway. The fountain water kept looping, soft and repetitive. The kind of sound that fills silence without fixing it. "You with someone?" I asked before I could stop myself. She glanced at me, eyebrows lifting. "No." I nodded too quickly, looked straight ahead. "I just meant because you looked like you were waiting." "For who?" she asked gently. I didn't answer. That's when I realized what had been sitting in my chest all week. Not fear. Not exactly. Jealousy. Not of anyone specific. Just the idea that she had a life I didn't fit into. That she could fold me away as easily as a clean shirt. She took her sunglasses off. Her eyes were tired. Not sad. Just careful. "You disappeared," she said. It was a few days. It felt longer. The words landed heavier than she intended. I could tell by the way she inhaled after, like she'd revealed too much. "You said you didn't want to be an experiment," I replied. "So I thought maybe I should act like it wasn't." "Wasn't what?" she asked quietly. There it was again. That space where something honest could live. I watched a little girl chase pigeons across the pavement. She tripped, got back up. No one panicked. "I think about you," I I said finally. The words felt thin compared to the weight behind them. More than I should. She didn't move. I don't know what that means, I added quickly. I'm not trying to complicate your life. My life is already complicated, she said, almost under her breath. A breeze pushed her hair loose from its tie. She didn't fix it right away. My son asked about you, she continued. Not in a suspicious way. Just curious. My stomach tightened. What did you say? That you're a tenant. The word felt small. And that you're kind. She looked at me then. Direct. Unshielded. You are, she added. Something in me cracked a little at that. I don't want to be a tenant, I said, before my brain could filter it. Her breath caught. Just slightly. The fountain kept running. Someone laughed in the distance. The world stayed ordinary. She leaned back against the bench, eyes searching my face like she was measuring risk. You're 26, she said again, but softer now. Not as a warning. More like a question she didn't know how to solve. And you're not just my landlady, I replied. The space between us felt fragile, charged but quiet. Her hand shifted on the bench, close enough that our fingers nearly touched. Neither of us moved them. If we do this, she whispered, almost to herself, it changes things. I turned slightly toward her, close enough to feel her warmth through the thin fabric of her sleeve. Changes what? I asked. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull her hand away either. Monday, the laundromat was closed. Handwritten sign taped to the glass. Closed for a few days. Family matter. No explanation. No emoji. Just block letters. I stood there longer than necessary, laundry basket at my feet, rereading it like the words might rearrange themselves into something less vague. Family matter. My first thought was her son. My second was that maybe this was her way of stepping back without having to say it out loud. I didn't text. I opened our thread 3 times that day. Typed, everything okay. Deleted it. Typed, need help with anything. Deleted that too. By Wednesday, the place was open again. But she wasn't there. An older man I'd never seen before was behind the counter. Gray hair. Efficient. No tea. No half smiles. She'll be back next week, he said when I asked too casually. Oh, I replied, like it didn't matter. She took some time off. Is everything all right? He shrugged. Divorce stuff. The word hit differently this time. I nodded like that made sense. Like divorce was a clean, finished thing. Papers signed. Boxes moved. End of story. But apparently not. That night, I passed her apartment upstairs. The lights were on. I paused outside her door. Just for a second. I could hear faint movement inside. A cabinet closing. Footsteps. The ordinary sounds of someone existing. I almost knocked. Instead, I went upstairs to my place and left my laundry unfolded on the chair. The next morning, I ran into her on the staircase. She was coming down. I was going up. The narrow space forced us closer than either of us was ready for. Oh, she said, stopping short. Her hair was down. No makeup. She looked softer and more distant. You're back, I said. For now. That phrasing didn't feel accidental. How's everything? I asked. Messy, she replied. Then, after a pause, my ex wants to revisit custody arrangements. It's complicated. Custody. Not past tense. Ongoing. I hadn't thought about that part. Lawyers. Court dates. The way her son might feel pulled in different directions. That's a lot, I said. She nodded. Didn't elaborate. There was a time she would have. Or at least offered a fragment. Now she gripped the stair railing like it was the only stable thing in the building. You shouldn't get tangled in this, she said quietly. I'm not tangled, I replied. She gave me a look. Not unkind. Just knowing. You don't even see the threads yet. I wanted to argue. To say I wasn't fragile. That I wasn't just some distraction she'd regret. But something in her posture had shifted. Not cold. Just protective. Of herself. Of me. Of the thin line we'd been balancing on. I'll be busy for a while, she added. With lawyers. Meetings. Okay, I said. It felt like agreeing to something I didn't fully understand. She stepped past me carefully, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Neither of us turned around. That evening, I typed a message. I'm not scared of complicated. I stared at it for a long time. Then I locked my phone without sending it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The laundromat was open the next week, but the bench near the window, the one where she used to bring me tea, stayed empty. It was late again when I finally knocked. Not midnight. Not dramatic. Just 8:42 p.m. I could see the light under her door. I stood there long enough to reconsider twice. Then I knocked anyway. Footsteps. A pause. The door opened halfway. She looked tired. Not fragile. Just worn in a way that didn't invite small talk. Hey, she said. Hey. Neither of us filled the silence. I won't stay long, I added quickly. I didn't want this to turn into avoiding each other. She opened the door a little wider. Her apartment was simple, clean. A half-empty mug on the kitchen counter. Papers stacked neatly at the edge of the table. Legal documents, I assumed. I'm not avoiding you, she said. It feels like you are. She leaned against the counter, arms folding loosely. Not defensive, just holding herself steady. I'm trying to be responsible, she replied. Responsible for who? She gave me a look that said, don't make me list it. My son, she said anyway. Myself. You. The last word landed softer. I stepped inside, closed the door gently behind me. I didn't ask you to protect me, I said. You didn't have to. That stung, but not because it was cruel. Because it was careful. You think I'll wake up one day and realize this was a phase, I said. I think you're still becoming who you are, she answered. And I don't want to interrupt that. Her voice didn't shake. That made it harder. And what if you're not an interruption? I asked. What if you're just part of it? She looked down at her hands. The silver ring still there. Habit, maybe. You don't know what it's like, she said quietly. To rebuild everything at this age. To finally feel steady, and then, she trailed off. And then what? I pressed gently. And then meet someone who makes it feel unsteady again. There it was. Not dramatic. Not desperate. Just honest. I moved closer, slow enough that she could step away if she wanted. She didn't. I don't want to make your life harder, I said. But I also don't want to pretend I don't feel this. This, she repeated softly. Yeah. Silence stretched. Not awkward. Just real. You think about me, she asked. Every day. She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Almost. That's reckless, she murmured. Probably. She studied my face like she was trying to memorize it for later. If we try, she said carefully, there's no halfway. No hiding. No pretending it's casual. I'm not good at casual, I admitted. A small smile finally reached her eyes. You're 26, she said again. But this time it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like she was weighing it against everything else. And you're not just my landlady, I replied. The air between us felt thin, fragile. I can't promise this won't get complicated, she said. I know. I can't promise it lasts. I'm not asking for forever, I said. Just honesty. That seemed to settle somewhere inside her. She stepped forward first. Not into my arms. Not into a kiss. Just close enough that her hand rested lightly against my chest, over my heartbeat. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was steady. She looked up at me. Okay, she said softly. And this time, it didn't feel like a pause. It didn't turn into fireworks. It turned into mornings. The first time I stayed over, it wasn't dramatic. No music. No rushed decisions. Just her kitchen light on at 8:47 a.m. Sunlight cutting across the counter while she poured tea into her usual mug and handed me black coffee without asking. You still don't take sugar, she asked. Still don't. She nodded like that meant something. We didn't tell anyone at first. Not because we were hiding, just because we were letting it breathe. Her son visited one afternoon. I helped carry groceries upstairs. We were introduced properly this time. This is, she started. Upstairs neighbor, I said lightly. She glanced at me. Then, steady, he's important to me. Her son looked between us, measured it, didn't smile, didn't frown, just nodded once. Okay, he said. It wasn't approval. It wasn't rejection. It was enough. There were awkward weeks, lawyer meetings, days she came home tight-shouldered and distant, days I questioned whether I was strong enough for the weight of her world. Once, I almost pulled back again. She caught it before I did. You're doing that thing, she said from the couch one night. What thing? Preparing to disappear. I stared at the floor. She was right. I just don't want to make this harder for you, I said. She reached for my hand. Not urgently, just certain. Hard isn't the same as wrong, she replied. So I stayed. We started small routines. Sunday walks past the same park bench where everything almost broke open. We'd sit there sometimes, not saying much, watching families move in loose circles around the fountain. Once, I asked, if I hadn't walked over that day, you would have eventually, she said. You're that sure? She sipped her tea. You're not good at unfinished things. She wasn't wrong. The laundromat stayed open. I still did my laundry there, even when I didn't need to. Sometimes she'd bring tea. Sometimes she wouldn't. It didn't mean anything anymore. Or maybe it meant more. We argued twice. About small things. About big ones hiding underneath. But we didn't retreat. I stopped leaving the TV on at night. She stopped standing at the top of the staircase like she was bracing for someone to leave. It wasn't dramatic love. It was practical. Chosen. A little inconvenient sometimes. One evening, months later, I found her folding towels behind the counter. Same flickering light. Same hum of machines. I leaned against the washer. You still think I'm experimenting? I asked. She looked up, that half-smile returning. You're terrible at experiments, she said. You get attached to the results. I stepped closer. Adjusted her sleeve this time. She let me. The dryer beeped. Neither of us moved right away. I don't think about disappearing anymore, I told her quietly. She searched my face, making sure. Good, she said. Then softer, neither do I. And that was it. No speeches. No promises that tried too hard. Just two people who almost chose distance and didn't. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's just someone remembering you don't take sugar. Someone noticing when you're about to prepare for loss. Someone staying when it would have been easier not to. And if I'm honest, I still can't stop thinking about her. Only now, it doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like home. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?